Okay, welcome everybody. It is 1:03 and 30 seconds. Well, actually 1:04 Verizon time. Thanks very much for attending. Welcome to everybody that is chosen to elect. For those who could not make it today and are catching this on a replay, we welcome all of you as well, and are really excited. This is the fourth year of the MCF Pre-Retiree Academy. We've had some really nice feedback in the past, and really excited to get going over this 8-week course. Just to kind of, as a reminder, MCF is an independent SEC registered investment advisory firm. We are your plan consultant for your retirement plan. That's how you found your way to us, unless friends or family perhaps shared a link or anything like that with you. And if that's the case, then welcome. We currently manage about 2.9 billion in assets under management, and each one of your plans has a dedicated service team, including a retirement planning specialist, which is myself or another financial advisor. We have offices in Lexington, Kentucky, Louisville, Kentucky, as well as Cincinnati and Covington area just north of us, and continuing to expand. A couple of housekeeping things. So if you do miss any of the live webinars, don't fret. We all have busy lives and jobs that we have to tend to. Obviously, when you're here, I certainly appreciate it, as we can get some interaction with questions and such. But all of the content that we release, whether it be on recording or recording a webinar, or pre-recorded, or written or otherwise, will be able to be accessed at mcfadvisors.com/pre-retiree academy. So that is on the screen. I'm going to leave it up there for a minute. If you, for some reason, lose that, feel free to shoot me a message, a text, or an email, and we will for sure be able to direct you in that right page so you can follow that up. Just so everybody knows, the content will remain up for the remainder of the year until we take it down at the beginning of next year and start doing the process all over again. So you'll be able to refer back and forth for some of these things if you need to take a little bit longer than the 8 weeks that we have allotted for putting the content out. So, one of the questions I love to go over really quickly is why. Why did this come about? Why a foundational course? And a couple of reasons why. First, retirement is different today than in previous generations. And, retirees used to be able to count on almost solely pensions. And a lot of that was our parents, certainly our grandparents, full health care benefits from their employees and their families. And we had relatively subdued inflation respectively over time. And while there's still a few employers, obviously, that offered pensions in the workplace, including some of you on this call, the predominant workplace savings vehicle now is a defined contribution plan or a 401k, or maybe some of you might be in a 403b, same type of defined contribution plan. And plans where employees save for themselves, obviously, incentivize people by giving a match. But with, increasing life expectancy, while that's a blessing, it also can present challenges for employees with the prospect of not having savings last long enough to cover, expenses beyond what our life expectancy may be. We now live 10 years longer than what our parents did, and 20 years longer than our grandparents. And while a lot of people on this call are kind of in that tail end of the baby boomers, and Gen Xers like myself are going to be working longer, we have to figure out how to combine all of these things and put them together. And it's a challenge for those age 55 and up, because either your parents or you have had to kind of teach all of this to yourself on your own, because the mechanism of retirement changed so greatly over the past 2 generations. And so If you had parents that kind of gave you those advice, or mentors that gave you the advice on how to do these kinds of things, and it's a blessing, but a lot of us have had to figure this out on our own. And the real challenge with this is that, we have to take a lifetime of savings and convert that into a stream of income. And all the things that we mentioned, increasing life expectancy, rising healthcare cost, and inflation, mean that we have to learn to stretch those dollars even further than the generations before. And these are different problems than honestly what our children are going to face. Your 20 something or 30 something kids are now, hopefully entering the workforce. They're climbing corporate ladders, and they're probably saving somewhere around 12 to 15% of their gross income, including matching contributions for their eventual retirement. And they don't really have to think about it because we have auto enrollment and we have auto escalations. And if you don't know anything about investments, then we have default investments that are really appropriate for them to kind of automatically put them in a better position than, say, the baby boomers or the Gen Xers like myself were. And so this is the current reality of where we're at. This is the transition, and you all find yourselves smack dab in the middle of this. And I'm sure some people are like, yes, yes. And that at its core is why we decided to kind of create this this informational course for people, employees, participants of our plans that are nearing retirement. And it's really even more than that. We want to create a personal awareness and give you a foundation for your own personal retirement planning journey, because that's kind of what this is all about. And working in this space over my career, and especially in the institutional side, working with participants more closely over the last 12 years, it really struck me over that first 5 years of it, if you will, about how much people just don't even know of the simple, one would think would be a simple thing, but we don't know what we don't know. Like, for example, one of the most common questions that I get seems so simple, but it's, how do I access my money? Like, I've saved this money, like, how do I get it now? Does it come to me like automatically? Can I set it up automatically? Do I have to take it out all at once, once in the year? Just simple questions like that. And the majority of people, it's okay that we don't know those answers, but it's literally simple questions like that that really said, listen, we can do better. We want to be here to help you. And so hopefully when we conclude this series, you're going to have a better or a higher foundation, a better understanding of some of these questions and the direction that you need to take for yourselves in regard to the answer of some of those questions. And so at its core, that's kind of what we did. I've often drawn parallels between, taking a trip and retirement. Maybe it's, in this case, this is a sailing chart from of the North Atlantic Ocean. And, sailing is a really good parallel, particularly if you work with an advisor or do it yourself. It's your boat. You own it. That's your life, your goals, your savings. Maybe you hire a captain, or maybe you get the training and you drive it yourself. But there's so many things when you sell your boat from one point to the next. So let's just say you're selling from here to here, going down there just next to the Dominican Republic. So many things have to be into taking into account. The seaworthiness of your boat. Are you going to be using gas? Are you using sails? Food, water, weather, all of these things along the way we have to take into account. And retirement is very similar in that matter. This is one thing, going a few hundred miles there, but can you imagine, going from there to there? But taking a trip or a vacation or a major purchase requires planning. How are you getting there? What route are you going to take to get there? How long will it take? Where will you stay during the transit of that? What food will you bring or buy along the way? Will weather impact that journey? What type of clothes will you need for the weather on the trip? And the list goes on and on. And what's really interesting is that all of us that have taken vacations and planned vacations, we plan these type of things routinely. Think about the last vacation you took. Did you just wake up and go and plan as you went? No. You figured out where you wanted to go, how you were going to get there, if you're going to drive, if you're going to buy tickets. How about the last house you bought? You certainly weren't driving down the street with no notion of buying a house and see a house, a for sale sign on the house, and just randomly think, I'm going to buy that house sight unseen. I'm going to do it without knowing any diligence of how, if I can afford it or not, or all those things. We plan on all of these things and we do it in advance. But interestingly enough, when it comes to retirement, we often don't approach it that way, or at least we don't until we're getting closer to the age of where we can envision those things, which is what's brought you here today. So you've taken the first step to kind of help close that gap. So congratulations on that. But I always find it, we are, some of us are trainers, or we're influencers of people in our circle. And it's really interesting that we don't conceptualize our future in the manner of planning something like that. Planning for retirement is way bigger than a vacation. It's even bigger in some cases, or, parallel to buying a house. There are so many things that we have to figure out. So use your center of influence to encourage people to not wait, because the longer you wait for it, the harder it is. And so that brings us to why you're here. Have you started planning your retirement journey? And if so, what steps have you taken? And that's really, what we're going to help close that gap, foundationally speaking. So that's the why. We're here to help you. We're here to raise your floor and get you in a position to really have that successful planning journey for retirement. So let's talk about the topics we're going to cover first. These topics will be covered in a combination of delivery methods through live webinars, recorded webinars. We have PowerPoint presentations, slide decks, worksheets, articles over the next week. It's designed to where you're going to get about 2 pieces of content each week. And you can see we have a great deal to cover. Today we're going to be, charting your retirement, or, the introduction and gathering data, taking stocks of our assets and liabilities. That will come out as well very soon. Setting your budget, understanding Social Security. We're going to add a couple of things as we go to these in between ones. So I might use the beginning session of the live to cover a few things that we sent out that were written perhaps as well. Retirement withdrawals, how to draw your money out and strategies that you can use. Tax planning, very important to be efficient, but we're going to keep really that very high level, very basic. Evaluating your risk, insanely important. If you take too much risk in retirement and have a huge market event, sequence of returns risk can really have an effect on how long that money will last. So your risk in retirement really becomes important. Adding to your savings, how you can improve that. Review or create an estate plan. If you don't, we'll do a one-on-one with an attorney. That's always a really popular one, the most watched one each year. Life insurance needs. Do you need it? Do you not? Medicare basics, going to flip that up and bring in a third party on that as well, to kind of interview and really a person that is an actual lives in that space and an expert on the matter. So I'm excited about that. Going to be a little bit different in terms of that. So we're going to record that and send it out. And then, maintaining the plan that you're building, what that looks like, how often you should do it, and whether, working with an advisor is right for you or not. So a lot we're going to cover on that. So welcome. A couple of points before I get going any further and really to the content for today. If you have questions, use the chat feature, or you can use the Q&A feature in the app itself. If you use Q&A, I'll read it. I can hit it's answered and it goes away. But feel free if you want to enter that into the chat. I believe I opened that up for everyone. Sarah Huster, who's on our institutional team, does a wonderful job for us on a lot of fronts, wears many hats. She's on the call today, so she will help me monitor those questions if you have anything specific. As well as I will give you my contact information at the very end and leave that up there. So if you have specific questions along the way, you can email me, set up a quick one-on-one if you don't understand something. And then, of course, everybody on the call, as always, will have the ability to set up a one-on-one virtual call with myself to kind of go over things you've identified, concerns that you have, maybe solutions that you're having a hard time in terms of getting to where you want to, and we'll tackle all of that as needed on conclusions. I would encourage everybody to we only put stuff on the website as it comes out to not encourage people to get too far ahead. So bear with us and thank you. So for today, everything when it comes to saving or planning for retirement is risk management and mitigation, one way or the other. Investing and saving is a risk management tool. Insurance is a risk management tool. Tax planning is a risk management tool, so you're not exposed to more taxes than what's necessary. Estate planning is a risk management tool, so you have say over what happens when you pass versus what the government does. It is all managing risk associated with all of those things. And so, it's in no uncertain order, we're going to cover these risks through the various subjects that we cover. And some of these are unknown, and some of them you're going to have to plan in a manner that that you're going to have to, put some assumptions for that unknown for the time being, and that's okay. But all of these really can play to the equation if you're going to be successful in retirement. And so you're going to hear me say this more than once if you've done one-on-one calls or if you've been in group presentations. There's 3 questions that everybody on the call needs to answer. The first one is, how much money do I need? And that's how much money do I need in retirement as income to live the way I want to live. The second question is, when do I need it? And it's not necessarily when you retire, but when are you going to start drawing from your savings? When are you going to do that in relation to when you're retiring? And then lastly is, for how long? How long are you going to be doing all of this? Well, if we had the answer to that question, as I say, this would be kind of easy. We don't know that. We have to guess that part. So that brings us to risk number 1, longevity, living too long. We covered that a little bit in the intro. People are living longer. Risk 2, that is and these are in no order, by the way, but risk 2 that is increasingly important and really has an effect on what your spending looks like in retirement, and that's healthcare expenses. We'll get to some stats about that in a minute, but for sure. Inflation, man, we felt that over the last couple of years, especially, haven't you? Inflation occurs over time. Sometimes it jumps in big chunks, and other times it goes down slightly, and other times it just rises slightly over time. But erosion of your spending power is real, and we have to learn what can we do to help combat that to the best that we can. Risk, asset allocation, that's risk. How your investments and savings are allocated individually is very important. It's not necessarily about how much risk you can take, it's about how much risk you shouldn't take. And so there's a bifurcation and a difference between that as well. And then excess withdrawal, not having a spending plan, spending too much too soon, living too long, and and not having enough money for that period of time. All of those things are 5 key risks that we have to identify. And determining factors for everybody in terms of, are you ready for retirement? And this is what we're all aiming for. We're all aiming to kind of have all of these things considered. But Social Security. Do you know what your Social Security projects to be at? If you don't, I'm going to ask you to find out. We'll get to that later. Pension benefits. If you have earned a pension, whether it be at a former employer or your current one, do you know what the income of that pension is set to be and at what age? Um, Retirement income, healthcare costs, and then the last one, don't take this one lightly, is emotional readiness. I think for the longest time, there are a lot of people that really, they really want to get to that point to retire, to kind of hang up the grind of it all. But then I see a lot of people, when they actually get to that, there's almost like a panic that sets in. Like, I've not necessarily planned of how I'm going to replace social interaction that work brings. Hobbies can do that to some extent, but make sure that, that you have a plan for that. Maybe you step away from the day-to-day grind, but maybe you're going to go part-time and something like that. And a lot of people need that transition, by the way, from an emotional standpoint, in some cases, more than they do a financial one. This is one of the most popular questions that I get from anybody. How much money do I need to retire? And it usually goes like this. My brother-in-law told me that I need $1 million in order for me to retire. And my answer to that is it sounds great. The real answer is that everyone is different. And the amount that you really need to have saved is directly proportional to the amount that you plan to spend. They go together. They go together in every way, including risk. But in general terms, we might not know how much we're planning to spend in retirement. But in general terms, most financial advisors you're going to talk to are going to recommend saving enough to replace between 70 and 90% of your pre-retirement income. So everybody tends to recommend 80, the 80% rule in terms of replacement income. And that is from all your sources. That comes from all of them available to you. Social Security, if you have pension, 401k, 403b, outside savings, other income avenues, those kind of things. And, the rule is very simple to compute and understand. If you make $100,000, then you would need to figure out how to replace 80% in terms of, or $80,000 in retirement for you to not really have a lifestyle adjustment. That's where that comes from. So, but the real answer is it depends on how much you plan to spend. That's how much you should have saved. But, 80% rule works. I'm good with that. But the whole purpose of you all coming here is to get a little bit more specific in terms of foundation. But again, most often it comes down to, questions like, how much money do I need to live the desired lifestyle that I want, or the current lifestyle that I have? When are you going to start drawing that money? And then the last one is, for how long? So those 3 questions always come back to the foundations of what we're doing here. So let's cover really quickly your retirement income sources. We mentioned Social Security. I know a lot of people, particularly young people, don't think that that'll be available to you. But if everybody on this call is 50, 55 and up, then I think you're in good shape that you're going to receive benefit of Social Security in some manner or form. Yes, in 10 years, they're going to have to make some changes where they increase age or change the maybe structures. That I think is already starting to come into the picture in terms of looking to do that sooner. Retirement plans. 50% of that 80% that you need to have saved usually comes from retirement plans and pensions for sure. So, it's no secret how much you're willing to save is directly proportional to what you end up having when you get to retirement. And so saving more yields more, but 50% of the 80% usually for most people comes from retirement plans. You might have income from investments or other income producing assets. Maybe someone on the call has some rental real estate. or a side business that they get income from that they're going to continue in retirement. Income from earnings, obviously earnings on savings that you have contributes to what your overall income can be and is. And then just other outside savings in general that we accumulate over our lifetime. So yeah, just another graphic in terms of where all those come from. It's also important to understand that the territory for retirement has changed. So, what do I mean by new territory? Retirement for our parents and grandparents, as I mentioned, was quite different. But Social Security benefits cover, income needs, and it was only meant to be a safety net. And this graphic really comes from the Social Security Administration. Only if you made $72,000, then only about 15.4% of your income in retirement will be provided from Social Security. And that's if you had current income of 72,000 a year. If you make less than that, it's probably going to be a little bit less. About 22% come from pensions for a lot of people, and then 45% come from our own sources. This would be defined contribution plans like your 401ks and 403bs, outside investments, other savings. So 62% as a whole, based on what Social Security says, based on all of those things, usually come from money that we have saved. Social Security is a big, important piece of it. And when you take that, becomes important as well. But the good news is that on these plans, you've probably done pretty well in saving. And even though it's a complex kind of formula to kind of figure that out, if you've been doing this for a while, then you're going to be in pretty good shape. If you're starting late, then there might be some catching up to do, but that doesn't mean that can't happen either. What kind of questions, can you ask yourself if, really to kind of think if you have enough to retire anyways? Well, am I in position to stop working? If you were to stop working now and try to draw 80% of your income, how long would that last you? What do your expenses in retirement look like? If you don't know that, what do your expenses today look like? And for most people, their expenses in retirement will be slightly different than in their, core of their working years. Is your house paid off? Are you having any health issues that might cause your healthcare needs to be higher? Are you going to change your living situation and move to a place maybe that is a lower cost of living? Are you going to be able to maintain the current lifestyle that you have? And of course, the last one, is your money going to last you well past life expectancy? And to give you an idea of what that is, it's about 79.5 for men today and about 82 for women, but it continues to rise. So, all of this starts with identifying how much you're going to spend. And if you don't know that, then you got to start kind of moving towards creating a budget. If you don't know how to start creating a budget, then the best way to do it is to track your inflows and outflows that you're doing currently, see where all your money's going, track that over a 2 to 3 month period. If you don't know, if you can't identify it, if you're unsure, track that, identify all those, figure out what you're going to carry on into retirement, what you're likely not to continue carrying on retirement, and then start creating a plan, which is a budget, for what that's going to look like. And even though if you don't know exactly what that's going to look like a few years from now, say 10 years from now, if you're 65, all you can do is relate it to kind of what you're doing today. So don't put it off. But we have to know where we're at before we know where we're going. And if you don't know how much you're spending in terms of that, this is a great time to go on and start putting that process together. Start your own spreadsheet. You're going to have a budgeting spreadsheet worksheet that is going to come to you in the next week that will help you start with that. It's savable, it's editable, and you can use that going forward for that. But it's important to identify what you're going to for sure continue to be spending and what you're not. It's also important to plan for unexpected expenses in retirement. You know, we live, if you own a home, home improvements are expenses, and they're important, and sometimes they're a necessity. Replacing heating and air is certainly one of those. They don't last forever. So budget, about how much that will cost you, not necessarily in any given year, but maybe an average of that over a few years is fine too. Or perhaps replacing a car. But current budget, account for all your inflows and outflows and expenses, and then start the process of creating a plan. And a budget is a plan, and it is meant to be a plan that puts you in full control of what your spending is. It's not fun. I totally get that. It makes us feel restricted. It should do the opposite, but that's just, psychologically, that's what data shows, is people don't like to budget because it makes them feel like they're giving something up, when in reality, it should do the opposite. It should empower you, because you become in control of exactly what your spending is. So, get that income, get those expenses, figure out what that net cash flow is, and then you can really figure out where you can cut or need to add in order to kind of augment your future. And a budget is not just a one-time thing. It doesn't have to be reviewed like weekly or monthly even, but we do have to review what we wanted to happen versus what actually happened. So, at least twice a year, but more than likely, every quarter is a nice way to kind of keep up with it in terms of doing that. Not saying anything that a lot of you all haven't heard, but an extremely important part of the process is, remember, how much money do I need? This is where you identify that for retirement. If you don't know that, then let's figure out where you're at today and how that relates to you moving forward. It is important to prioritize, that budget. And this triangle isn't necessarily, the order in which you need to do it. It can be, but we all have needs, wants, and then savings in terms of when we're doing that. Once we kind of identify all those things, then we can strategically deploy in an adequate manner in all of these categories to kind of get us there. And I would say this, that it doesn't have to be overwhelming. Think small. Find places that you can do better. You can save money and deploy that somewhere else for your future benefit, if it's for retirement or debt reduction, if that's what your goal is. But if you just put aside $2.50 a day, which is, way less than the small cup of coffee at Starbucks, you'll be saving almost $20 a week, $17.50. That's almost, well, it's $78.50 a month, or almost $1,000 a year. So that's what I mean by putting aside, thinking small, and doing that. $1,000 a year doesn't seem like much, but over 25 years, that could turn into $150,000. Or $200, a month almost in spending power for you in terms of that. So it doesn't have to be overwhelming. You just have to start somewhere and then kind of get that momentum for deploying those. But identifying what you're going to spend is tremendously important. As I mentioned before, there's going to be some categories that you're going to swap out maybe in your working year. So maybe you're spending money on something today that you're not going to have to use in retirement. Maybe that is you're going to have your house paid off before retirement, and that's a part of that expense goes away, is the payment. But one of the ones we don't know that we need to account for, and this is the biggest one that I see, is healthcare expenses. According to a Fidelity survey that they did, and they are the largest record keeper and custodian in the world. But according to a survey that they did, and they aggregated a lot of data, and they determined that the average out-of-pocket healthcare expense estimate for a 65-year-old couple is $300,000 over the rest of their life. Now, that's average is about 150,000 a person. Men actually are a little bit higher of that. And so that is a cost, the out of pocket of that. Even though Medicare kicks in at 65, you're going to still need supplements, but you're still going to have co-pays and some of those things. So figuring out that and leaving that in, swapping out maybe your house payment and substituting a portion of that or all of that for healthcare expenses is a nice conservative way to look at it. But we need to account for a number in terms of that. For anybody that is looking to retire before the age of 65, before Medicare kicks in, and doesn't have access to like a health plan trust or something like that, at least in today's terms, until you're 65, the amount you should figure for your health insurance is $1,000 a month, because you're going to have to get health insurance from somewhere, or should, and $1,000 a month is what we normally use in terms of today. Doesn't mean it won't go up. It likely will. But in terms of that, it's about $12,000 a year per person to insure yourself. And it's just a pretty average plan. Inflation. Obviously, this is one of the risks that we talked about earlier. If you're saving and you have your investment mix correctly, I don't worry about inflation quite as much as maybe what you do. I worry about people being too conservative too soon of having inflation impact in general. The Fed's target for inflation is between 2.25% and 2.5% year over year. That's about what the average is over time. So that's pretty much spot on. But it's important to kind of take that into account, because the future cost of goods and services, food, it goes up, and it has. We've seen that. And it definitely erodes the value of the assets that you have set aside to meet those costs, if not properly maintained and from an asset allocation standpoint. And what that would look like is, like, a relatively low inflation rate of 2% can have a significant impact on your purchasing power. So if you look at this, $50,000 today in 25 years at 2% will be almost $20,000 less in terms of your spending power. So the strong likelihood of continuing inflation makes it imperative that you take into account that, particularly from an investment allocation standpoint, to at least pace and keep pace with inflation. What are things that keep pace with inflation pretty well? Real estate has done a nice job, but so has equities and stocks have been probably the best example of being able to outpace inflation. I'm not saying you need to be too aggressive by any means. That'll be a different module that we talk about. But you don't want to be too conservative too soon, because your buying power can be diluted quite substantially. And then also, I'm not going to cover all the expenses that you could possibly have. You all are highly intelligent people that really can identify that for your own needs a lot better than I can. But, relocation, home improvements, we talked about those. Vacation. I mean, you're still going to travel, or hopefully a little bit, and take some breaks from the norm in retirement. Hobbies, how much does those cost? Are you a golfer? Are you a fisherman? Do you like pickleball? You're going to be choosing those kind of things. Hobbies are a big part of it for a lot of people. Aging, caring for aging parents, and man, this is true. A lot of us on this call are in what's known as the sandwich generation. where we are trying to get our kids through college, but we're also caring for our aging parents at the same exact time, kind of getting it from both ends. And so that can definitely add to expenses if you're not careful. You know, and then the fun stuff like grandchildren, or if you're blessed enough to maybe purchase a second home or those kind of things. All of those are expenses that you all need to do it. So next Tuesday, we will be providing you with the budgeting worksheet to kind of help you get started for you to enable your budget process as well. And early in week 3, so not next week, but the week after that, you're also going to be provided with a personal financial statement template. That's also known as a net worth statement. A friend of mine in this business, I heard him speak a few years ago, and he said something that really made sense to me. And so I've been borrowing it from him ever since. But budgeting is tough, and a lot of us don't like to do it. Myself, it's not my favorite thing. I'll be honest with you, but I do it. And I've been doing it more as I've been getting older to kind of make sure I'm on track with the goals for myself and my wife as well. So I've been looking at strategic deployment of my extra money and being prudent in places. So I've been doing it too. And but it's an arduous process that, like I said, psychologically, that makes us feel restricted. And it's a sacrifice, like choosing not to spend money on X so you can improve your situation because of that, whether that be paying down debt or increasing your savings. That's a sacrifice that you're making, but sometimes it's delayed in terms of its gratification. And you know it's the right thing to do, but it's still hard to do it anyways. So my friend suggested that we track our net worth along with our budget. Net worth is simply your assets minus your liabilities. So things like your checking account, savings account, retirement savings, any other investment accounts that you might have, real estate, cars, stuff that you own of tangible value. I don't count couches and those kind of things. If you have art and some of those, then yes. I mean, stuff that has tangible value and seemingly, can increase especially. But those are your assets. Liabilities are just stuff that you owe. So whether it be credit cards, personal loans, student loans is obviously a big one. Hopefully not for so many people on this call. That's the biggest challenge of the next generation. Mortgages, auto loans, leases, those kind of things, stuff that you owe. And assets minus liabilities equals your net worth. And if your goal is to increase your savings, then you're lowering your spending on one end to increase your savings on the other. By tracking your net worth statement on a regular basis, you see the fruits of your labor in real time. And honestly, that provides a little feedback in the meantime versus just putting it off till later. And I think mindset is everything. And if it can make us feel better about what we're trying to do, then tracking that net worth statement with it makes complete sense to me. If your goal is to pay down debt, then and you deploy capital to reduce your debt, that's increasing your net worth. If you owe less, it's increasing your net worth. If you save more, it's increasing your net worth. If you spend too much or borrow more and your net worth goes down, then you're going to see that too as you're tracking that. So it gives you that real-time feedback that honestly makes budgeting a little more worthwhile in the interim, if that makes any sense. And so I'm really big on that now. I heard that like 6 years ago, and I've been saying it ever since. That makes really good sense to me, versus just making the plan and kind of feeling like, restricted. I mean, I get it. We all want to spend what we want to spend when we want to spend it. But it's not that simple. And then lastly, these are the subjects that we're going to be covering on here in terms of that. I'm going to leave my contact information up on there today. So the main points and action items that we're going to take away from this is when you get that budgeting worksheet, start gathering that data. Start gathering and literally figuring out how much you're bringing in and how much is going out. I want everything. I want how much you're paying on your insurance for your cars, how much you're, figure that in there, how much you're spending on food, on electricity, gas. The more that you get in the depths of that, the better you're going to be in that process. The more specific you're going to be able to identify what you're spending and what that spending need is going to look like. And then from there, we will move on to the other things in terms of like, okay, what does it look like in terms of this is what my spending need is going to be. Then how much, this is how much I have saved today. This is how much it projects to be based on how much I'm saving today and in the future. At 65, if I'm going to retire then we'll be able to, say, okay, if I spend this much money, and I'm getting a reasonable return of this is how long my money is going to last. And we can account for things in that scenario like inflation and those. But it all starts with the spending. I know it's not the most fun. That's why I give it to you first. But it's really important. And that's, we all have to kind of start developing that plan, and the infancy of this one is really figuring out what that budget's going to look like for you in the future. And if you don't know what that is, then let's figure out where you are today and then take the relevancy of that. So this is my QR code that will take you directly to set up a one-on-one call. If you have a simple question, just email me and I will get back to you in time on that. But otherwise, you could schedule a call if you're having trouble with anything as we're going along. If you're really stuck, if you're really overwhelmed, then let's simplify it on your personal situation as well. And we can, and then at the end, we're gonna bring all together what you learned, and then you can set up a one-on-one call. You can have your list of questions that you've identified that maybe we need to get a little bit more specific with, that's outside of what some of this content is going to bring. And we're going to get more specific, like on the withdrawal strategies. There's going to be 5 specific strategies that you could go with. We'll talk about how you're getting your money and the different pros and cons of that, Social Security, rules of that, strategies that you can take in terms of thinking of waiting or taking it earlier, Medicare, what you have to do, when you have to do it, estate planning, tax planning. So thank you all very much for doing this. You're doing, you're half the battle is just getting started. And so I'm really glad you're here. We're really proud of the program that we put together and the feedback that we've gotten. So with that, I'm going to stop the share really quickly. And then it looks like we have a question in the Q&A, and I'll leave it open for that. Why is Social Security not considered an asset? I would consider it an income stream more than an asset. Once you've identified what that income is, an asset is something that you own that you could spend today or pass on tomorrow. Social Security and some, oh, my internet connection is faulty. Hold on one second, guys, just one second. Okay, that says I'm on there, sorry. So Social Security does have, there is spousal benefits to Social Security, but I would say it's not an asset. Oh man, we're still disconnected. Thank you. I'm having connection problems really quickly, so hold on one second, please. I'm not sure why. Can someone give me a thumbs up or in the webinar chat or even the Q&A if they can hear me okay right now? Gotta love technology. Okay, thank you, Denise. Thank you, Angie. Appreciate it. Okay, so to the person that answered the question, I would treat it more as an income source. So when we identify how much our income need is going to be, we're going to subtract Social Security at some point in time. Sometimes we have to stagger that because sometimes people are going to retire before they start taking Social Security. So then we kind of have to break it down into two different pieces in terms of that. So it is part of the income that you're going to create for your income needs in retirement, for your income needs in retirement. So from that standpoint, it will net out from how much you're going to need to live on. But in terms of not having, in terms of it being an actual asset, if you die and you don't have a spouse, then it's not like you can leave that to someone else. So that's why I wouldn't consider it an asset just personally. What other questions that we have? Are there any questions specifically that you all know that you would like to get the answers to as we go along with this? If you don't have it today and you want to email me something specific, I will do my best to work it into the conversation of these. And if not, then I'll certainly answer you on an independent basis. Does anybody have any questions in terms of those kind of things? Okay, another person asked, is there an off-the-shelf retirement modeling tool software that you recommend that takes into account Social Security, pensions, and other income calculators and taxes? And am I providing that? Yes, there are. Some you have to pay for. Some come with your certain custodians will give you access to certain of those. So like Fidelity, if your plan is with Fidelity, for example, they have a version that you'll be able to do all that on. As far as there are others that you can pay for that will help aggregate that. Obviously, we have plenty of, we have a software that we use in-house called eMoney that's very sophisticated, that takes into account all those things. Sorry, I'm disconnecting in and out. It's very strange. I can see when it's doing that. Sorry, so I'm taking my time in terms of that. So yes, there's some that you can pay for. I can direct you towards, I do use some tools for all of these things, but they're not under one roof. And the one I have, the ones I tend to use or recommend are free, but it's not necessarily all encompassed in one house. If you send me your name, I can send you a couple suggestions that you might be looking to pay for. And if you're looking to hire a financial advisor at all one day, then this is something they should do for you. No, you shouldn't pay extra for that for sure. But I can provide you with tools, but not necessarily all of them under one roof. If you do have Empower Retirement or Fidelity, they get some things that get pretty close. What other questions do we have at all? That was a good question, by the way. I've never had that one, but that's a good one. All right. I don't want to take up more time than necessary. We're coming right up on the hour here. Most of these will be less than an hour. Most of these will be less than an hour. Can I send the tool ideas? Yes, I certainly will. I certainly will. You have to have access to Empower Retirement to be able to kind of do that. I know that's not who Delta's record keeper is at right now. They do have some tools on your website that you can dig in with that. But again, it's not everything that you are asking for under that. But I'll definitely take your email and stuff down and send you a couple of ones to help you get started on that for sure. Any other questions or anything that people would like to see or hear about specifically as we move on with all this? Okay. Well, if not, I'm not going to take up any more of your time. We'll get the recording of this put out tomorrow. Again, if you get caught up with anything and need help with anything, don't hesitate to send me a message. That's what we're here for. It's what I'm here for. I'm here to kind of facilitate a better outcome for your retirement. I think you all will have a much better understanding of all the things you want to look at as you're getting there as well. But if there's nothing else right now, Kimberly, you're very welcome. Thank you for attending. If there's nothing else right now, I'm going to jump off, and you all have a wonderful day. See y'all.